So the question is, Miss Opal's fried chicken. Was it more common back in those days to not refrigerate food?
Well, it depends on what you mean by refrigeration. In the days that I lived growing up on the farm, we had no refrigeration. In fact, we had no electricity except for a generator that made electric lights for a good bit of my early childhood.
You didn't have a refrigerator. You had an ice box?
No.
Oh.
We were living out in the country. You couldn't go get ice, and by the time you got it home from the store, it would be gone. No, what we had was what they called the spring house. And what it was a little building, like a very small shed, big enough, not tall enough to stand up in, but big enough that you could get into it crouched over. And there was a basin. I think it might have been made out of rocks. It certainly wasn't cemented, where water from an underground stream went into it. And it was cold, but not ice cold. And that was what we used to keep things cold in, like particularly milk. That was the thing that you had to keep cool or it spoiled almost in a day.
Okay.
And it was probably a distance of a block from the house, downhill, down in the woods. And I don't even remember when my father built it, but he built this little shed, and there was a walkway on stones with boards over it where you could go into this little shed. And then they put crocks. You don't know what a crock is probably, but it's like a very thick clay thing that you bought. They were purchased, but they were things that you put like a gallon of milk in and set it down into that cold water that was coming. It was kept cold. It was not icy, but it was cold. And then covered. It would be covered. And then we had a churn where we would have buttermilk, butter and buttermilk come out of the sour cream. And the butter would be put down there, and the sweet milk, the fresh milk, would be put into that water. And then somebody would have to go down the hill, a block-long trip down to the spring house to get whatever we needed.
But did you keep meat in there?
Occasionally, yes. But mostly we had our own meat. We almost never bought any meat, and it was either fresh, in which we used it pretty quickly, or it was cooked. It was either canned or made into sausage or something like that.
Which had its own preservatives of some sort?
We used, no, not preservative, but we used what they called lockers. These were commercial establishments in the town, and you rented a freezer locker, and you could pack meat up. When we butchered, we'd pack the meat up and label the packages and take them up there and let them freeze, and then we would get them one by one or two by two whenever we needed meat.
Well, so how long would you keep in your house unrefrigerated, say a couple of chickens that you just cooked?
Any chicken that was killed and cleaned was cooked immediately.
And then how long did you keep that? Or it was eaten? It was all eaten?
Pretty much eaten within a couple of days.
Okay.
Probably we were not as sensitive about length of time of having chilled stuff as people are now. And I don't remember people getting sick with it. But we had a big family and we ate things pretty fast. That might be the answer. But refrigeration didn't come. There was no reason to have an ice box because you would have to make trips to the city to get ice, which we didn't do. We lived about 5 miles out of the town. But I can remember when we first got electricity, and this was, I was in school probably 6, not my first year in school, but probably 6 or 7, and the way you got electricity was if enough people in a certain area would pay to extend the electric lines, and then they'd go that far, and then some other group would pay to extend it further. And
so you had to pay for the construction of the
well, I don't know
system?
exactly, but there was payment involved with getting it to come out there, and of course then we had monthly bills.
Right.
But there was an initial payment, I know. And enough people had to agree in that area before they would bring the electricity out that far, the main lines. And then, of course, we had to have electricity into our house. But that I was in school, and I remember when we got a refrigerator. And I wanted so much to make popsicles out of Kool-Aid. And I made some and put it in there. It had a freezer compartment. And I went to school and I came back all ready for my popsicles, and they were liquid. And I didn't know that sweet water that required a lower temperature to freeze than plain water.
Oh.
You could have ice cubes, plain ice cubes, but if you made it sweet, it did not. At least I
So
think
the
that
freezer
was
wasn't
the explanation.
wasn't cool enough to make that freeze.